So we've got a new edition of Dungeons & Dragons coming out, and at the same time, we've got so many new amazing tabletop games coming out as well. You got Daggerheart from Critical Role. As many of you guys know, I'm a big fan of Draw Steel from MCDM, an amazing playtest that I have been very happy with. But all these new games are going to be bringing in so many new people to tabletop games. And what is a big hurdle that a lot of new players face? Is it finding a group? Well, yes, it usually is finding a group. But besides that, another big hurdle is often writing your backstory. This is the first step for a lot of character creation processes, and sometimes that can be a bit of a hurdle for somebody who doesn't really know what's going on. There are a lot of mistakes made along the way. Whether you create your backstory before or after picking out your race and class, I mean, it's challenging for some people. So, today, let's go over some fun little Reddit anecdotes of terrible backstories, and at the same time, I'll throw in one of my bad early backstories and how I mended some of its issues. Without further ado, let's get started. First off, one time, a player character was a druid and a sailor at the same time to get a variety of proficiency bonuses, but had no reason it was that way. Okay, so this is a common mistake made by brand new players. They see the character sheets, they see the numbers, and they see number go up. Number go up equal good. This also can come from just watching a couple of YouTube shorts or TikToks about overpowered D&D combos, and somebody pointing out that, hey, if you meld sailor and druid, you get easy skill proficiencies, yay! And then you just copy the build and move on. But I think that does yourself a huge disservice. Now, of course, I don't mind when player characters have a good skill proficiency spread. In fact, I would generally prefer that player characters have a good proficiency spread, just because my campaigns do have their challenges, and having more powerful player characters means I can challenge them more. Yay! And, generally speaking, I like it when players succeed their dice rolls, because the coolest stuff happens when the players get what they want. So yeah, no problem with the build itself, but I want the build to have some kind of purpose behind it. I want to win all the time. I love seeing player characters who are genuinely enthusiastic about what they're playing, the character that they've created. There's nothing that makes me happier than seeing someone text me and say, Crispy, I think this character is going to be really, really awesome. That makes me happy. I see the enthusiasm, and frankly, I get enthusiastic too. I become a fan of these characters. But if someone just copy pastes a build from YouTube or picks something just because number go up in the proficiency category, well, is that really a character that you're gonna be a fan of? I mean, sure, you can, but if you have nothing beyond just the baseline of race, class, background, and that's it, I'm sorry, but I'm just not going to feel very connected with your character. There's nothing that bums me out more than the red flag of somebody responding to my question of, can you describe your character, with, oh, they're an elven druid with a sailor background. And then that's it. Well, that's not really exciting. If you're going to create a character like that, that's awesome, but try to think more in depth about what this character is. Try to create ideas that you're going to be excited about, and it's going to be much better for you and everyone else at the table. Oh, this one's like the opposite. Half-orc barbarian with the sage background. When asked to justify the unusual background, he just answered, athletic scholarship. And you know what? I really like that. Like, yeah, that is a silly, dumb little joke, but that's the kind of thing that can evolve over the course of the campaign. Like, is this orc currently a student? Why did they leave school? Those kind of questions lead to creating a backstory. And athletic scholarship, that's a fun gag that can be spread throughout the campaign. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one, but this is the good version of what we just saw. Somebody who picked stuff just because they wanted the good numbers, whereas this guy picked stuff probably primarily for some kind of build reasons, but had a justification. Even if it was a joke, it's at least something. Give your DM something to work with. Give yourself something to work with, because this is much better. Okay, moving on for real. An antisocial drow elf who is uninterested in forming friendships and disinterested in wealth, fame, power, adventure. This is summarized, by the way. Yeah. Look, these kind of backstories are just, they drive me and basically every DM up the wall. Your character needs to have a reason to adventure at baseline. Almost every D&D YouTuber says that, but so often people sort of forget about that. They forget that the story is improvised by multiple people at the table. If I'm creating a character in a book, I know that eventually I'm going to drive that character towards adventure. There's going to be something that I create that changes their mind, that changes their lack of interest. But in this case, the DM needs to sort of guess at the kind of changes you want. And frankly, if you're the kind of guy who doesn't think your character needs any changes, if you're the kind of guy that thinks a disinterested character who doesn't want to do anything is a good character, I mean, boy, I really don't know what to tell you. That's really, really rough. I'm assuming most people who do this aren't like that. I'm assuming most people who do this just think that their DM is going to figure out some way to hook their character into the adventure, when that's a responsibility your DM really shouldn't be taking on. That should be your responsibility. Your DM is already handling a lot of chores, to say the least. They gotta prep the individual sessions. If they're homebrewing the world, they gotta come up with all that. They have to create characters, they have to create encounters. Your DM is handling a lot as is. So if you put more work on them, I think that's a dick move. Now, I do want to say, this is often seen as like the #1 character mistake when it comes to making a backstory. Everybody talks about character motivation, but I actually think this is sort of adjacent to one of my favorite character tropes, the doomed character. A character who doesn't want to form relationships, doesn't want to create bonds, doesn't need money, because that character is doomed or dying in some way, and their reason for adventuring is out of desperation, that they want to live. All the characters in Baldur's Gate 3 kind of fall into this category. All of them are doomed characters because of the parasite. V, aka one of my favorite, if not my favorite, video game protagonists ever, V from Cyberpunk 2077, is a doomed character. In fact, my favorite example of a doomed character who is rapidly dying throughout the course of that game, and everything they do seems so absolutely pointless throughout because the futility can just be crushing throughout the story. I love that as a character trope. It's so cool. This character is more driven than most, and it's funny that it's so adjacent to this disinterested lame bot of a character that at the end of the day, basically everybody hates. The worst I saw was this rogue, who had pages and pages of backstory that amounted to: orphan boy started by getting food however he could. The player had a full story about his parents and how their killer had killed them, but he wrote so much that an NPC killed his parents' killer, and the NPC turned himself over to the law out of guilt. There were just 0 threats to follow up on, and he played like none of it really happened. I was too young to remember the killer, etc. His backstory may as well have just been orphan boy joined Rogues Guild to make money. Yeah, this is bad for a few reasons. The vast majority of people know you need threads in your backstory, something for your DM to pluck at to integrate your story into the campaign. But actually, my main problem with this is not that. My main problem is something that doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion, and that is player characters who kind of just ignore the backstory that they have. Ginny D talked about this as a mistake that she made. Her character Aisling had this really ultra tragic backstory. All her friends are dead, her mother figure is dead, her tribe hates her, there's a world-ending rot that's gonna end the entirety of life on the planet. That's pretty dark. But her character is sort of just cheerful about it, and not in a way that she would describe as interesting. She just described it as her character having her personality because she didn't want to play this ultra depressed loner. And that is so important. Look, a lot of us write stories that we're not interested in playing out, right? I recently wrote a story about a civil war that happened in my homebrew world. I wouldn't actually be interested in running a campaign during that civil war, though. I just like it as background flavor. When it comes to campaigns I run, they're stories that I'm interested in actually playing out. And at the same time, when it comes to characters I create, I try not to forget what I'm actually going to find fun. I like playing tragic, sad girls. It's great. Kalia, Yumi, these are my favorite characters to play. I love them so much. It's not like they're constantly angsty and depressed, but they are both characters with trauma, and I like that. It's fun. While on the other side of that token, I don't think I'd have a lot of fun playing a character who is super cheerful. I create those kind of characters a lot, just to vary up my roster of NPCs, but would I be interested in playing those characters for extended periods of time? I'm also not a comedy relief guy. I do a terrible job playing any sort of comedy relief character, because, I mean, I'm just not that funny when push comes to shove at an improv setting. especially if I've got to do it constantly. Look, I'm gonna be honest though, you gain awareness of what you enjoy playing through experience. I mean, Aisling, the character that Jenny D was talking about, that was one of her first player characters. I mean, how is she supposed to know what kind of character she would enjoy playing at a table when she's only been playing for a little bit? It's totally understandable that you'd start out with a character that you may not be super into, but there's nothing wrong with changing it up. Jenny D changed Aisling to just match her own personality more, and I'm gonna be honest, bro, that's fine. Like, as a DM, it might bother me a little bit that you're not really engaging with all the backstory hooks that you created, but I'm here to help you facilitate your fun. If you're not having fun with this angsty character, then you're not having fun with the angsty character. That is okay. We can work together to change things up. Worst one I ever saw was some dude who read the module ahead of time, then made a backstory explaining how his character knew everything in the module. He explained that he did it so it would make sense that he knew the secrets of the campaign. The DM was hesitant at first, but decided to go ahead with it for the sake of getting started. How bad could it be, really? He'd still have to roll for most of this stuff. It stopped being fly the moment we started the game, and he started heading straight towards this one nondescript building. Ugh, metagaming. Look, I know this might be harsh to some people, but if you've read the module in advance and know everything, then I'm probably not going to run that module with you. This luckily isn't too much of a problem, as I basically entirely run homebrew campaigns in my homebrew world, but I can see a future where I start using smaller scale modules, like what can be found in Candlekeep Mysteries, to flesh out some side quests or maybe fill in some time before we get back to the big thing, you know what I mean? And if somebody reads those in advance, especially intentionally, then that just shows a real lack of respect for the game master. This isn't an in-game problem, it's an out-of-game problem. I like seeing my players get surprised. I like seeing them be excited. And I just don't think you can genuinely be excited or surprised if you've read everything in advance. I also see people using the sage background or high intelligence to justify stuff like this. Justify looking up monster stat blocks, for example. Luckily, this hasn't happened for a really long time, but looking at monster stat blocks is just really lame, especially if you try to use it as some kind of gotcha over your DM, like, oh, this monster's only supposed to have 101 health and we've done 150 damage, why isn't it dead? Are you cheating? When the answer is probably just, I'm not cheating, dude. I just changed the stat block because you're a big party. You know, I hate things like this with just a burning passion. No matter what stats you pick out, no matter what you write in your backstory, problem player behavior is not okay. It's disrespectful, and it sucks, not just for the DM, but for the other players. This extends far beyond metagaming. It's what my character would do, does not matter if you're being a dick. Alright, so we got some time left, and I'm going to cover my bad backstory. And that is Kalia Sulfero. If you're unaware, Kalia Sulfero is an NPC that first appeared on this channel in a Tabletop Tavern Tips video, but then she appeared in Shadow over Kerkonos, and she's also from my home game, where she makes frequent cameos and appearances as well, because she was basically the first thing I ever created for my homebrew world. The entire world sprouted up around her, her family, her city, and her story. The web developed from there, and that means Kalia is really important to me. So why am I talking trash about her? Well, because her backstory sucked originally. I mean, I made her in what, 2015, 2016, a long time ago. So her backstory boiled down to, my family's dead, my friends are dead, killed by an assassin who gave me this big scar on my face. Wah! I was adopted by this evil-ish guy who has bad intentions for the world, and I'm conflicted about following him, and I've killed lots of people, and I'm a pro assassin, blah 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 blah. Yeah, ew. That backstory was rough, and at the time, I could tell at least some of my player characters knew that it was overly edgy and overly silly, because yeah, it was an edgelord backstory for this emo, black-haired lesbian girl that was, you know, way too much, especially for a brand new DM. The mistake in this case was simply just being a bad writer on my part, and while my friends are way too nice to ever say it, I needed to change that backstory. Kalia wasn't interesting. She didn't have any depth or goals. She was this assassin who succeeded in her goals. She put her dad in power and killed the people she wanted to kill. her story is done. And yeah, she was an NPC, so to a degree that was okay, but she was central to the campaign because despite how annoying her backstory was, in the game itself, the player characters found her to be really charming and fun because just like Ginny D with Aisling, I didn't play her to be all that tragic because I wanted her to have a sense of humor. I wanted her to be at least a bit charming, and so the players really liked her because of that. However, it didn't really make much sense to her backstory. So what did I do? I changed her backstory. Look, I'm of the opinion that retcons are okay if they make the game more fun for you and the player characters. Like, the player characters weren't, like, up in arms over Kalia's backstory being cringe, but I was. I was internally very conflicted around Kalia. So, I had a plot twist. I had to reveal that she was lying. Her family's not dead. They're alive. And the reason she lied is because they married her off to this Joffrey-type person who was terrible to her. And that was actually her first kill. She didn't kill tons of people during some revolution. She's not some pro-assassin. She just killed her fiance, who at the end of the day was just some teenager. And he still gave her that big scar on her face. That's why she lied. She wanted to be bigger than she actually was, bigger than she actually felt. And frankly, that change in her story made her so much more of a likable character. I mean, that was the catalyst for her romance with Daphne, one of the player characters from that campaign. The lesson for me is just don't be afraid to retcon or change up a backstory that you made a while ago. Hell, even one that you just made a couple months ago. If you learn lessons, if you get better, if you just want to change a pace, there's nothing wrong with asking your DM for a little bit of a rewind. But yeah, that is another video on backstories. We talk about these a lot, but for good reason. They're real important. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed, then you might enjoy our latest episode of RPG Horror Stories. Lots of fun skits. It's linked in the cards. But before you go, please leave a like and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own tips or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment better backstory to let me know you made it to the end of the video. In essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell. The worst I saw was this rogue who had pages. How much time do I got? Oh, I got so much time. The worst I saw was, if you guys enjoyed this one, then you might enjoy. Oh my god, I'm doing so